What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Alex Cuesta Show. How's everybody doing out there on this Wednesday, January 17th of 2024 for episode 107? Dave, I almost said Thursday because like an idiot, I always write down like the date and stuff, and I didn't change it from last week when we recorded on Thursday. So if I looked at my phone really quick during the intro to be like, what day is it? Well,
at least you were smart enough to do that.
I did, and I'm sitting there and I'm just thinking, I'm such a slave to the stupid thing that I write there. I caught myself, but you're still here.
Surprisingly, you haven't kicked me off yet.
I haven't kicked you off yet. I mean,
I'm around and I'm cold in my house because my heating went off in a fucking cold front. So now I just have a bunch of heaters going on.
I hope you freeze. I think that's a good way to get rid of you.
I might
freeze and turn into a block of ice, and I never have to talk to you again. It'll be a great day.
Yeah, it'll work.
But anyway, let's jump into the show. Before we go into anything, if you like what you hear today, like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars, Spotify and iTunes, spread this word of mouth, and find us on the socials at the Alex Cuesta Show. We have our cool new logo that I threw out there and I released. We like it. We think it's cool. If you like it, let us know. If you think it's cool, if not, tell us it's lame. I don't care. Just let us know. And before we jump into this week, I want to talk about last week's show. We had on our good buddy, Craig Leppert. He is the chairman and founder of Shadow Jumpers, and he's an entertainment executive over at CBS Viacom. And it was an awesome show. What he does with Shadow Jumpers, trying to help people with porphyria spectrum, allergies to the sun and things like that, something he suffers from, is something that, we really enjoy supporting because it has a huge effect, and Craig's an awesome dude. So please go support that. Go to shadowjumpers.org if you can. But this week, Dave and I always love jumping into our nerd culture and things like that. And I am pumped to have this guest on because he's someone who is a solid follow on Twitter if you like base commentary about entertainment and, media like Marvel, DC comics and anime, things like that. He is Jon Del Arroz. He is a best-selling author, a YouTuber, and he is the man behind fandompulse.com. What's going on, John?
Hey, not too much. Just editing articles. I've actually got one by Literature Devil coming up tomorrow morning, which I'm really excited about. I don't know if you guys follow his YouTube channel. He's awesome.
We're going to bring up Literature Devil today in this show, later in the show, because he had some fun going on Twitter. So, but the first thing I want to do is, first off, talk about Fandom Pulse, fandompulse.com. What is Fandom Pulse? Why should, if you like comics, if you like manga, if you like entertainment, why should you visit Fandom Pulse?
So basically, I saw a need in the market for a sort of based news agency. We have a lot of just shill productions out there with like Kotaku and IGN and CBR, and they just, amplify the obnoxious messages of like woke Disney all the time and just like try to get you excited for next product, consume more product, right? And so there needs to be somebody out there really to counter that message and to really like be like, hey, these people are destroying things that we love, like Marvel Comics, Star Wars, all the time, and they're doing it intentionally. And so having somebody push back like that in the media is a valuable source for the culture war, and just for like so people don't get fake news. I mean, if you look at it, they're saying Aquaman 2 is a success, like in all these. It's like in what by what metric? It's like
they successfully hit Amber Heard until the opening day, basically.
So that's just one example, but they do this with everything. It's like they gaslight all the fans out there, and somebody needs to tell the truth, and so that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and it's funny because every once in a while I will click on still like a CBR article or something that has like a top 10 because sometimes they have some decent, interesting takes. But whenever it's absolutely shitty, I always scroll up and find that it is some chick who wrote it, and they have so many feminazi women that write this dumb shit and where they rank like why they rank certain things. They're like, this has some problematic writing, but it was from the 80s. And it's like, shut the fuck up. Let us enjoy some of our favorite stuff and stop giving us your dumb recency commentary. So definitely go visit Fandom Pulse if you're tired of getting absolutely shitty commentary on some of the things that you enjoy. I
Wait until you find out that those like top 10 lists that are those like, obnoxious chicks are really just AI chatbots that they fed list into because they really are. But, like, they really are. A lot of them are. Yeah,
it's terrible. They're following the BuzzFeed model, and hopefully they go the route of BuzzFeed and go away. But so also your YouTube channel, where can people find you on YouTube? Is it just Jon Del Arroz?
That's right, Jon Del Arroz. I've got a second one, JDA Talks Comics, also, which I literally just review comic books on there because I wanted to have something purely dedicated towards that. What I found early on, I tried to do both. I tried to do like one video a day of like the news stuff of what's going on and talk about pop culture or whatever, and then one video a day of a comic review. And I was like, I'm going to balance it like this. But I noticed like I'd be getting like 1,000 clicks on my like pop culture commentary reviews, and then I'd be getting like 50 clicks on my comic review. So I'm like, oh, it's killing my channel algorithm. So I separated it, and actually both do a little bit better just because YouTube like throws you into these little like compartments where you're only allowed to talk about one thing. So if it knows you're a comic review channel, it actually recommends you more and gets the word out more on these comics that I like. So
yeah, it's all about beating the algorithm with YouTube, honestly. It's not about being good at what you do. It's about knowing the algorithm, because there's a lot of good people out there that just, suck at algorithm and they just never get noticed. Hi.
And a lot of the people out there that you're watching on YouTube are actually just AI chatbot. No, I'm just kidding. But they're about to.
That would be really impressive.
I mean, there's some of the ones that just like, even some of the people we follow is just their avatar. Do we know that they're real? Are they real there? They might be AI chatbots. It's a Gundam. Until I see you in person, I don't know if it's real. So, so I want to get your opinion on, just the general landscape of comics, comic book movies, and like the entertainment sphere with things like that. There has been so much damage done, right, by Disney Marvel, destroying so much. Like, obviously, Sony Marvel is still trying to do some good stuff because Sony Marvel doesn't completely suck. Trying better than Disney, right? If they're trying to make something woke, it's not as openly woke, right? And DC.
Have you seen the images for Madame Web?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
yeah, I forgot Madame Web exists. I'm sorry, I stand corrected. They fucking suck too. But but DC's always kind of sucked at live action. Like, they have a few good ones. Like, you'll get like the Batman trilogy or a few random ones, but they've always kind of sucked. And now they've gone more woke. So is there any saving some of these old IPs from what we're seeing going on right now?
They've already killed it because we're in a shared universe for all of these things. So, Spider-Man's already there with Miles Morales, who is not Spider-Man. He's Miles Morales.
He's Miles.
And like, it was one thing when Miles Morales was in the Ultimate Universe, and it was like a side universe sort of thing, or like DC does it in Elseworlds or whatever. But the minute that they just bring him into the regular universe, you've just made Spider-Man not special anymore because there's two people with the exact same powers running around. And they haven't just done that with Spider-Man. It's like, there's Hulk with Red Hulk, and then there's female Red Hulk, and then there's, She-Hulk. So it's like they've got all that. And then Wolverine's now got, another, she used to be called X-23. Now they call her just straight Wolverine, which is like in order to just confuse things further. Every character just has these like diversity checkbox, like allegory, not allegories. What's the word I'm looking for? Not anagram either.
Like replicants.
Replicants is a good word. Yeah. It's not exactly, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
but it starts with an A. I know that. But it's made all the characters not special anymore, and it's made everything muddied in the water, and they're all there, and now they're all gay too, and it's like you really can't come back from that. It's
some
like,
of them are in wheelchairs,
right?
Or they're getting out of wheelchairs in Doctor Who. They're getting out of wheelchairs because wheelchairs are offensive.
Well, they did that to Batgirl. Like, I mean, or like they, Joker put her in a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. She actually had a progression. It was like one of the few cool things. Like, I'm not usually all in on this. Like the Echo thing is ridiculous with the peg leg, but like, with Batgirl and what they did and turned her into Oracle, that was actually a really cool character progression. And yes, she was disabled, and we didn't have to like clap for the fact that she was disabled. She just was, and she was working to overcome it. A disability is not like a good superpower. It sucks, and it sucked for her, but she did everything she could to overcome it. She used her intellect to overcome it, and it shows how hard somebody like that actually has to work in order to do something right. And that was really cool. Yep. And it made the character awesome. Well, what did they do? They just erased it one day. And just reset the continuity. Now she's not in a wheelchair anymore. So it's like, and they didn't explain it. And it's like, well, that's kind of like just like a sad thing. So once you kind of like see that kind of pattern where they just do whatever the heck they want and they make everything, this week it's somebody with a peg leg. Next week it's it's going to be a transgender person. Next week Batgirl's going to identify as a fish or something. It's like, who knows? And it just like makes it so it's like as an audience member, you just feel so insulted because they just don't value you. The editors are obviously not keeping a direction with continuity or caring about the characters' past or histories anymore. It's just really sad to watch.
Yeah, and I find that it's like all these things that they're doing, it's not like they're really, innovative, right? Having gay characters, having, some characters die off and become like other things. But if you do it well within a story, right, you can make it done. It can be interesting. But the issue I feel now is, like you said, they're just identifying as things or resetting this world or just doing whatever the hell they want. And there's no fluidity. There's nothing there to make it enjoyable. There's no good story that's bridging up to it. And I feel like that's...
No.
Go ahead.
DC Comics actually warned that they were going to do this. They called it like the 5G initiative. And they said they were going to change things to like make continuity looser and not really matter anymore. And they've really done that. Like every book really just is its own thing. And there's no like consistent style. There's no consistent voice to anything anymore. If you look at what made DC great, like post-Crisis, and Marvel great in like the 80s and 90s too, there was a clear direction for the entire universe. Now, maybe some books were funnier than others and some were darker than others, but it felt like it was a universe moving forward together. Now all these books are just completely disjointed because the writers are lazy is what it comes down to at the end of the day. Oh, yeah. They don't want to actually work on knowing anything. And so they just try to invent their own thing over and over again. And you don't want to invent your own thing when it's Batman. We already know what Batman is,
Yeah. And I was going to say, I think that's one of the biggest things too, is like fans will always be angry and stop liking things if they feel like the person that's actually writing and editing, the people that are actually writing and editing the thing, love it less than they do. Like if they're not showing the reverence that the fans usually have, then it'll be like, well, why exactly are you there, and why are you ruining the thing that I like more than you now at this point? Because if you're doing the job of continuing that character story, you should like it about as much as I do, probably more, because you're the one that's in the weeds there, in the trenches.
And
that's right.
And I think another issue that is going on, and like you said, now they're all kind of like one shots, right? Where before you would get a different creator, a different illustrator and everything, but they would at least continue the gained powers from the other people, unless it was something like that they were doing like far reaching, right? Like that was just completely out of the realm. It was just a one shot. It was an obvious one shot, right? Where before you had, like you said, some continuity, like as Superman was gaining more powers, it's not like one day someone was decided like, well, he can't fly anymore. He's back to jumping over buildings. It's like, no, at one point Superman could fly. Now he can fly. So like you said, they're all one shots now. And I know this has been a thing that a lot of people that talk about comic books have said, but manga and anime are kicking comic books ass right now because it's so much easier to follow a manga. It is one creator, one story split into arcs, essentially. That is the format of it all. And it's kind of like, okay, I know what I'm getting when I'm reading One Piece. One Piece is long as hell, but it's about Luffy, it's about the Straw Hat Pirates, and I know that's what I'm going to get. And it's going to be from Ichiro Oda. That's it. And I think, like you said, people are getting tired of these one-shot type of deals, or I go to read a comic about Harley Quinn and all of a sudden she's doesn't want to bang the Joker anymore. She's friggin' scissoring Poison Ivy. Like, this is not like that's like freak fandom that someone decided to do on their own, like a fanfic, and it's nothing that we asked for. And I don't know. I think it's ridiculous.
And you got to remember, Harley Quinn is a kid's character from the animated cartoon, which is like a cartoon for kids. Yep. It's creepy, like when you get into that, but that's another story. But yeah, you've got something with like the American comic book industry. And this is really just Marvel and DC. If you get into like other creator owned stuff that's like indie stuff, like if you read my stuff, for instance, you're going to get a storyline within a book, and then the different books going to just have a different storyline. You're not going to have to worry about it so much. But Marvel and DC have set up the whole system that like it's an interconnected world with all these stories interconnected for all these books. And they did that intentionally to try to, when they were, making basically the direct market for these bookstores, to flood the market with these books to try to force you to only buy their books to crowd out the competition. Is what it came down to. And in the 90s was the big excess of this. You'd get like Maximum Carnage, and there'd be like 14 parts to it, and you'd have to try to find them over 3 months, over 5 different books, and it's like, geez. And once they started doing that kind of thing, and they actually got rewarded for it because people actually really were, enjoyed collecting those. Like it became like a scavenger hunt almost of fun. They kept doing it and making it worse. And so you can't just follow one storyline or one book anymore. You have to follow all these storylines. They didn't used to be like that. If you go back to the 60s, like Thor's pretty self-contained, and, Captain America is pretty self-contained. They might cross over, and they might bump into each other periodically, but you don't have to read the other book. You just read one book all the way through. And that's what made it easy to follow. Like if somebody really just wanted to follow one book, they could. And so that's where manga's really got a great thing. If you don't have to follow anything about any manga at all. Like I only read one book. I read Freerun, Beyond Journey's End. And that's the only manga I'm getting right now.
Yep.
And I get it every 3 or 4 months. I read the chapter. I remember what happened before. I'm happy. And then I just move on to the next one. And it's great. And it's very simple. And normal books work like that too. So if you're reading like, what's a good science fiction series? I'll just go with Dune. You just read Dune, then you read the sequel to Dune, then and there's some side stories later, after the main story is kind of done, but that's it. You're just reading Dune. It's not like you have to read like all of Frank Herbert's everything and then like all of this guy at the same publishing company's stuff, like in order to get it. And there's not some epic crossover between like Dune and Star Wars. Like, thank God they haven't done that yet.
Oh man.
But
that'd be weird.
Don't give him ideas. Stop giving him ideas.
I'm sorry.
And and that's like also what made the creation of the Avengers and the Justice League kind of badass, right? All these streamlined characters that had their own things, and there was a crisis too large for them to handle, so they needed to come together. And now that's kind of been abused, right? That was an event. It was an event the Avengers were created. It was an event that the Justice League was created because you had characters such as, Doomsday, Darkseid, Thanos, Galactus, like things that these characters couldn't handle on their own, and they were earth-shattering, galaxy-shattering, and they were necessary. Where now it's just like, oh, I'm reading Spider-Man, so here comes Cap in there for no fucking reason to help out Spider-Man for Doc Ock, who Spider-Man has always handled on his own through his wits and everything like that. But now apparently all the Avengers need to come, and it's just gotten way too large. So at this point, have they driven a real fatigue for like the mainstream superheroes, even amongst like, comic book nerds? Like I grew up reading a bunch of comics and things like that. Like the last thing that I collected, like you said, all these big different ones, I collected all the Civil War graphic novels because I thought Civil War was good, but there's like 26 other graphic novels connected to Civil War that creates a whole story. And it's like, then Secret Invasion happened. And I was like, I don't want to do this again. Like, so do you think there's a real fatigue, not only amongst like the normies, but also comic book people about like, I don't want to do this anymore, Marvel, DC?
Absolutely. And like Civil War is a great example. You read Civil War, you're like, this is pretty good. Then you read like some of the connected ones. Some of them are good.
Yeah.
Some of them aren't good. Some of them are completely unreadable. And it's like, wait a minute, like I just got duped into buying all this crap. Now they do this with every event every year. And now they're writing them like to make these like 1,000-page omnibuses, fill those up. And it's like they have all these like little filler stories that they just like throw the name on there just for some extra sales, like from some cheap artist and writer that like nobody's heard of before in order to just like, pad the shelves, it seems like. And so that happens a lot. And there's been a change. I was actually talking to a comic retailer earlier today, and it's been over the past couple years. People used to follow Spider-Man, like you said, and they would just get everything with Spider-Man, and they became unwieldy. You couldn't even do that because there's just too many Spider-Man books on the shelves. The current event for Spider-Man is called like Gang War, and he's like it's the same. It's like the same like Hammerhead gang and all them. They're fighting over turf wars and stuff. But now it's an event, and it's like, okay, we've done this before, but for some reason She-Hulk's involved in it, and for some reason like they have all these one shots. There's like a Daredevil one, and then I looked at the Daredevil one shot to like be like, oh, I like Daredevil, and I looked at it, it's not even Daredevil, it's Elektra wearing the Daredevil costume, and then and then there's like one like they made Mary Jane a superhero now called Jackpot. So it's like what? And Mary Jane's a superhero? That doesn't even make sense. And so it's like, and you have to buy all that to get the event. Nobody wants to do it. So the change has been that people are no longer following the characters as much. And a lot more people are coming in and saying, I want to buy, Eric July's written books at this point, right? And they're just following a certain creator rather than following a character, which is honestly a healthier thing, because if you look at manga, like that tends to be the case a little bit more there. If you like one manga creator stuff, if you like I like
Soul Eater, so I like Fire Force.
Yeah.
You can like look up that artist and then be like, oh, here's another book, and then check something out, and you'll know that it's going to be pretty much kind of in the same vein, and you're going to like it, and it works pretty well that way, and that's a way to build a manga collection pretty well.
And when it used to be that way, right? With Stan Lee, with Kirby, with Frank Miller, with and it used to be very similar. It'd be like, okay, I know that I like their style, I like their creations, I like their comics, so I'm kind of going to read anything that they're involved with. But it did become a point where, not generally with those guys, but even with some of the more modern comic book artists, that they would just kind of do a little bit of work, or maybe a little bit, slap their name on it. All of a sudden you're reading something that they're marginally involved with, but their names are on it. So it does become kind of tedious. Now, you kind of talked about, how things are turning. So I want to do a little shift over to a turning tide of
culture,
culture and opinions on a lot of things going on, because there's a lot more people like us three around here that are willing to really push back and openly push back against mainstream stuff. So now, Dave, you're the one that told me about, the Little Devil tweet. So go and explain.
Not Little Devil, Literature Devil.
Literature Devil. Sorry, whatever. Lit Devil, same thing.
Want to give him a cute name? You might have to take him to dinner first.
I mean, I will. Okay, he's adorable.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the shenanigans that happened on Twitter, John, but Literature Devil put out a tweet basically pointing out the obvious, that Rorschach is the hero of Watchmen. And, it got the deluge of comments from weirdos that are trying to tell him that how could that be true, basically calling him a chud, trying to use Alan Moore's own words, even Alan Moore is obviously crazy. So why would you ever use his own words? And you just saw the pushback, and I mean, Literature Devil got nothing harmed to him for it. And it's a good thing to see when you could point out normal things like that. And even though you get attacked for it, it doesn't matter, because one, you have people backing you up, and two, you can just make fun of them and nothing really happens to you for it. So I don't know if you saw that. And I don't know.
He actually got a ton of engagement and gained a ton of followers off. Exactly. That's really what happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw that, and I asked him to write up his thoughts as to why Rorschach is a hero, and he wrote me a 1,500 word essay on that, which is going to be on fandompulse.com tomorrow morning. So if you want to read his, if you've ever watched Literature Devil, he's a really smart guy. Yeah. He is editing Yellow Flash's comic book that's coming out right now. He's made his own comic book, Dr. Alpha, also. Yep. And he has detailed breakdowns of books and comics that are just really brilliant. And so I'm very, very happy that he was willing to write this for our website here, because he just laid out his whole thesis of Rorschach, and I'm not going to spoil it, but you can click on that tomorrow.
So, quick question: do you agree that Rorschach is a hero?
I don't like Watchmen. Is my thought.
Fair enough.
I think that Watchmen is a deconstruction of heroes, and I think that
it is.
Alan Moore intended him to not be a hero in a snarky, arrogant kind of way, but he ended up, because SJWs always screw things up when they intend to do something, he ended up making him a hero accidentally, and that's kind of my take on it. But if you look at what Rorschach's based off of, which is The Question, Mr. A, Steve Ditko's creations back at Charlton Comics, those characters have an unabashed, strong, objective moral language that is beyond any other characters out there. And Alan Moore was trying to mock that from a commie leftist perspective, and he failed at it. Because unfortunately, the commie leftist thing isn't true. And so when you have a perspective that's not true, and you try to mock something that is true, you're going to actually make the true thing look cool. And this is the same thing we're seeing with the Barbie movie and all the like I'm just Ken accolades they're getting. Like they tried to make this like vapid feminist movie and they accidentally like said, hey, we actually need men. And it made all the Ken dolls really cool. And so it was a total mistake on their part. But at the same time, it got the truth out by accident. And so that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite part about Watchmen, though, is that Alan Moore is so piss poor at doing what he's done, what he's trying to do, that a normal observation of that story, even watching the movie, you put a regular person there and they'll say, oh, man, yeah, Rorschach guy's weird, but he's pretty cool. Like, he's my favorite guy of the whole movie. So you put any normal person down and say, hey, look at this and tell me what you think. They'll come out completely different from what Alan Moore wanted. And that makes me so happy.
And also, I think commenting on that didn't read Watchmen or didn't watch. Like, they're just people that are just, Alan Moore fanboys or fangirls that are just like, we're going to defend our person. You can't read that and not come away with the main character.
I will say this. You got to remember you're dealing with crazy people. And but also, these are the type of people who will throw around the term media literacy when media literacy to them, even if you want to say media literacy is a thing, media literacy to them is just, how leftist is it? How can I make it leftist? That's it.
And I used to argue
who else would be the hero of it? I mean, you got Dr. Manhattan, who's like the creepiest, evilest person ever, really.
Yeah.
You've got Night Owl, who's just a total cuck, right? You've got Silk Spectre, who's a whore. Yep. So it's like, I mean, who are you going to root for?
He's the only one that has a code, and he might be off his rocker a little bit because they all kind of are. But me and Dave were talking a little earlier. He has a code that he lives by, and he's the only one you can kind of look at and be like, okay, at least he has,
something
he has values that he goes by. Like everyone else, like you said, everyone else just kind of, Alan Moore made them so flawed as to make them unlikable and one-dimensional in a lot of ways. So I don't know. Those people are nuts and they're to be ignored, but I'm happy that Literature Devil gained more popularity.
Yeah, and the best part is that they're being ignored in every single avenue, because I want to also touch on the Gina Carano thing that happened recently, where a bunch of people really didn't want, I think it was an expo in Canada. I can't remember where it was, but she's going to a convention. A bunch of people are upset about it, of course, because Gina Carano doing anything upsets people. And even a Canadian news channel decided to run a piece about the people that are upset about it. So the convention then doubled down and gave her another event. And that makes me the happiest I could be, because we're doing the things that should have happened in the first place when people try to complain and get into these hobbies to change them and not actually enjoy them, and just ignoring them and saying, no, just go away.
It's wild.
Yeah.
It's really wild. But that's the case. I mean, if you're looking at even Echo's like showrunner just made some comments too, saying like, this show's not for everyone. And it's like, wait a minute, why would you make a show? And then when you say something's not for everyone, you're kind of throwing shade at it. You're saying, it's got some problems that a lot of people aren't going to like this. Yeah. Why would you go blow $100 million of Disney's money or whatever and make something that's got some problems and knowingly, and then put it out there thinking, it's not the best product? That's crazy. But they do that. And they're like, they are intentionally doing this. And then they go, you know what? Most people aren't going to like this. And I'm proud of that. And it's like, huh? Yeah. And then you call them on it. You're like, why would you say that? Like, why don't you want your fans to like this? And then they go, you're just hateful. It's like, what? No, I just like, you're the one who seems hateful here.
Yeah. And it's exactly like Lord of the Rings of Power, right? It's like they made something.
No, well, don't say Lord of the Rings before it. That's
not. Yeah, it's just Rings of Power. Honestly, Rings of Power fucking suck. But it's like they obviously made something that they knew the hardcore fans would hate, right? And they picked doing something from the Second Age because they knew there was little literature on it, so they could be. But they just destroyed and butchered it. But they knew this was hot garbage when they put it out, because when they were sitting there going, they're like, oh, we're receiving so much hate from bigoted people. And it's like, these are the nerdy people that voted Democrat their whole life. And they freaking hate you because you're ruining their product. Like it's bizarre to see. And the Gina Carano thing is, and I think it's Fan Expo Vancouver, I think is what,
thank you.
The thing that they're doing there. And she's it's interesting the Gina Carano arc, right? Because she goes from being like hottest chick in MMA, everyone's like wet dream for a little bit because she was a smoke show that could fight. And then she, comes out. She's really not like she was always semi-political, right? She was never shy about what she was saying. She always had her foundations. And then Star Wars occurs. She's one of the most likable and fan favorite characters in The Mandalorian. And then she comes out and makes a comparison that I thought wasn't bad at all. And all of a sudden, boom, cancel culture comes for her. So what do you feel about the Gina Carano stuff?
I stand with Gina Carano, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
And I was one of the early people to report on this Fan Expo thing because I saw this Canadian news website trying to concern troll about it and try to shake down basically the Fan Expo and rile up a mob to harass the people who are running it, basically just because she's showing up there to sign autographs and say hi to her fans. I mean, that's pretty messed up.
Yeah.
And this happens all the time. I've seen there's an author, John Ringo, who's a really good writer, another science fiction guy. And, he's a conservative guy and he's an older guy. He's been around for a long, long time. And because he's a conservative guy, they all, the same thing happens. This happened a few years ago, and he was supposed to be like the chief guest of this literary convention in North Carolina. And, they just harassed them out of having him there. And they actually managed to get these people riled up enough and freaked out enough that they canceled him. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. So I'm really glad that it didn't work this time at all. And of course, it just created more demand for her to be there. I think that's fantastic. I think the tide's turned a little bit. I don't think it's going to happen in every case, but in some cases, when people see this kind of behavior, more people are going to flock towards somebody like Gina Carano and actually try to help her rather than try to cancel her at this point. So I think cancel culture's kind of past its peak in a way.
I think so too. And I think, it just becomes to a point of, is this going to become a dangerous situation, right? Because we've seen this with a lot of the guys in the Daily Wire. Daily Wire guys will go to college campuses all the time. And they have to cancel some because it becomes a legitimately dangerous situation. And we know, I call it Canada because I think it sounds better, but Canada has a lot of yahoos there. And they are getting more and more leftist as they go. Trudeau is very much turning it into a Marxist nation quickly. Now it's accelerating. I really feel like there is a good chance, and I hope this isn't a thing, but there's a good chance that there might be some legitimate violent threats because of this, because these extremists on the left, they only know so many ways. It goes first, they'll shout at you, they'll yell at you, but they are not afraid to use violence. Look at everything that happened to Viola Gaines. The poor woman was locked in a freaking a room for how long when leftists were banging on the door trying to get to her. And God knows what they would have done to her if they got her. So I'm just hoping, this is all great that she's getting the support. But when it gets to the point when we know it's going to get to the point, there's going to be credible violent threats, out there before. And what is the expo going to do? Because that's a tough situation. As much as I want the expo to sit there and say, no, fuck this, she's coming. You got to think of her safety. You got to think of everyone else's safety there. And it really puts people in an awful situation, which is what the leftists do all the time.
Yes. What I'll have to say about this is like, I've had threats like that made against me. I have a guy in Australia. I actually got the police calling me the other day to warn me. He's like, yeah, we get a call from Interpol. Apparently some guy in Australia is threatening to come to California and shoot you. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like, what was this? He's like, oh, he was rambling on YouTube. I'm like, oh, okay. And I thought about it and I'm like, I could freak out about it or whatnot, but like, is the guy from Australia really going to come to California and shoot me? Probably not. And so a lot of these people talk big online is what it comes down to. And you can't live your life in fear of that kind of thing because there's so many people who love to just like over talk big online like this and go crazy online like this. And usually they're too scared to even show up in person rather than let alone like approach you in person, let alone actually like try to do something. So unless like, if somebody rolls it, I mean, I would assume there's security like, and,
Hopefully.
that kind of thing at the convention. So it's like, I mean, you just kind of got to let them do their job at that point and just, hope that these people are the cowards that they appear to be online.
And as scary as it is, I think it's almost a compliment when you get to the point where someone's like actually they care about you enough to, you got haters. I know you don't want them to be that extreme, but it's like, hey, At least you're listening, dude. Thanks. Follow my next video, man. Go hate on that one too. Give me some money. How about you super chat at me too? Let's do this. But
That's right.
So I want to switch a little gears because obviously a lot of the things that, we're touching on have to do with a lot of politics, because politics is an infestation, getting involved in everything. And it's always been marginally involved, right? There's been some subtle messaging going on in a lot of things, but now it's so over. And we're in an election year. The Iowa caucus just happened. What is your opinion on so far everything going on with the election between, Trump, DeSantis, Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy obviously just dropped out and endorsed Trump. But what's your opinion on everything going on with all this? And what are your general thoughts on everything going on?
I mean, Trump is 100% the nominee, and that's going to happen. And so, of course, they're going to try to mess with him in the courts. They're going to try to mess with them all the way around. I wouldn't put him past them, intentionally giving him some disease or something to try to get rid of him.
There's disease that's coming out,
people,
apparently.
Yeah. There's these very scary people around doing this stuff at this point. I think that's a risk. But beyond that, he's the nominee. And he's also got a lot of angry people because, let's be honest, 2020 was not legitimate. They messed around a lot there, and there's way too much evidence of that. Mm-hmm. And so you got a lot of angry people on that front, and you've got a lot of people really watching closely, and they've changed some of the rules now, so they can't really do that again. Yep. So he's going to win unless like something weird happens and creepy happens. And I hope that doesn't happen. But I also don't trust any of these people in power at this point not to do something because I just don't see them. In 2016, they were caught off guard because they thought there was no way. Yep. Right. And now that they actually know that it can happen, they're going to pull some hijinks. They really are. The rest of it doesn't matter. I mean, Nikki Haley can talk all she wants, and Ron DeSantis can blather all he wants, and Vivek can endorse all he wants, and all of them are irrelevant. Let's be honest. So, yeah.
Are the New Hampshire numbers real with Nikki Haley now polling 40% to 40%? I mean, New Hampshire, what is that? Next week, the New Hampshire primary occurs or something like that. Are those numbers real? Is there any possibility that Donald Trump loses New Hampshire?
I don't think so. I think, maybe she might get, I think it's probably going to be overstated by a little bit, like 35% or something like that. Yeah. I don't really see it happening. I don't really know a real person who actually likes Nikki Haley.
So here's
not
the thing.
A singular person.
My theory is your Nikki Haley fans are Republicans, not conservatives. Your conservatives, your right-leaning libertarians are like, all right, we're going to, hold our nose and vote for Trump if we're a right-leaning libertarian, or we're going to waste our vote, right? Or, those are those guys. And your conservatives are really going to go for Trump, and your disassociated leftists, people, former Democrats, are going to vote for Trump. But you're legitimate, you're Mitch McConnell, you're piece of shit Kevin McCarthy. Those are the people that are support your Nikki Haley's. You're ones that are like, we need to get back to our fiscal responsibility. And it's like, motherfucker, they sucked. Those parties, your George Bush parties, your Mitt Romneys, your John McCain's, they all absolutely sucked. And Donald Trump is not perfect. There's things I disagree with the man, but God, he at least attempts to do shit. So that's why I've been supporting him, but that's who I think is there. Now, has DeSantis killed any chances of 2028 for him?
2028's a long way away, and he can regroup. He really needs to figure things out. I have buddies who've been close with DeSantis. I'm pretty connected in the political world, actually. Yeah. And have worked on a couple of his campaigns and stuff like that and know him personally. Yeah. And they told me even back in when he was rising as a star for taking on Disney, they said he's not ready for the national spotlight. He's just not ready. And that proved to be very much the case. Yeah. So I listened to them back in the day. He's not going to do 2024, obviously, but he's got 4 years to figure it out. It's totally possible. It's also possible he's not going to figure it out. He's going to just go the way of Ted Cruz or whatever, just kind of disappear too. So.
Yeah. And, it definitely has to start. And I think a fair criticism of DeSantis is he has a terrible campaign team. They have been god awful, and that's concerning because now you're going to be picking cabinet members. You're going to be picking all these other big nominations. And if you can't get your campaign team right, that is a concern. Like, it has been an absolute disaster of a campaign that should have been, I don't think it was ever going to be truly competitive to Donald Trump because Trump had so much momentum, but it should have at least been to a point where, okay, you ran a respectful campaign. You were running anywhere between 20 and 40% in most states. Like, you were a decent candidate, and you weren't the shit show that you are. And now it's just like, when you hear Ron do debates and talk, he's still Ron DeSantis. You still agree with a lot of the things he says because he still has very much of the same ideas Donald Trump had. And that's what we liked about DeSantis. He was a much more polished political version of Trump. That's what I think everyone enjoyed about him. And now you have his surrogates on Twitter that are just awful. Like, Christina Pushaw needs to be out of politics. I don't know if you know her. I don't know if you're friends with her, but she has been such a disservice to DeSantis because she just seems childish. Where before, when she was just, being, bringing his message out more as the governor, right? When he got a win, she highlighted it. She amplified it. Now she's extremely petty, and she's sitting there trying to argue with the Laura Loomers of the world. And it's like, that's not what we wanted to see from a DeSantis campaign. You know what I mean? So we wanted to see that brash aggressiveness, but in a more controlled manner. And I think that's whoever on the campaign team, like him getting rid of Will Chamberlain, I think was a mistake because I think Will would have steered him in that direction. But I don't know. That's my biggest criticism of DeSantis. I still like the guy. I still think he'd be a pretty good candidate in the future.
Yeah, I also think just like watching him in speeches, he's come across as a little too bitter against Trump too. Yeah, and it's just like, unfortunately, that is the landscape we're in right now. Mm-hmm. And Trump is the nominee. I'm sorry, Ron. I mean, I know you wanted to try, but like, you should have been trying for VP. Yep. And I think if he tried to maneuver himself to be VP and you had a Florida governor being strong with Trump, we would have had a very different primary season right now.
100%.
That would have been awesome. Now, I asked about that way back in the day also to my friends. They said, no, his ego is way too big to where he'd not even try to be VP. And that's unfortunate. But, that's a kind of what could have been in my mind that obviously Vivek's like, really, trying to kiss up right now. He's brown nosing.
To be fair, he's been doing it the whole campaign.
That's true.
Then now especially. I really do think that, I mean, for basically anyone in the Republican primary is kind of a lost cause to go for it this year because out of all kind of presidential runs in history, this Trump run is about like retribution for a lot of the voters, especially because of 2020. As much as people really don't like Trump bringing it up and are like, don't want to relitigate it, a lot of people that aren't on Twitter did not like the way 2020 ran out, don't trust the way 2020 ran out, and now it's a retribution year. It's about bringing what was rightfully supposed to happen because a ton of people do not trust what happened in 2020. No matter how much you don't hear about it on Twitter, normal people who voted for Trump don't like what happened. They don't trust what happened. So no one had a necessary chance against Trump unless he completely disregarded everything he did in the past, which he didn't. So like, he would have had to destroy himself for it not to work. And that just wasn't going to happen.
That's right.
And and I think one of the biggest issues with the campaigns too is I heard a lot of people justifying like DeSantis and Haley and them all staying in because what if Trump actually gets put away, right? What if he gets put in a state prison? He can't pardon himself. He can't really run too strong. They wanted to be next. Wouldn't you try to kind of cozy up to MAGA then? Wouldn't your goal to be like, hey, if your guy goes down, pick me? Because right now, I would still vote for DeSantis. If something happened to Trump, DeSantis is the guy. I'm a Trump supporter that would vote for him because I think he'd be fine. If Haley ends up getting the ticket, I'm just going to vote for David. Like, I'm fuck her. She sucks. Yeah. Haley sucks. But, I think there's a lot of Trump supporters that still would hold their nose for DeSantis, depending on a lot of things. But there's a good chunk of them that they've completely alienated. And you're not going to win the general election without having all of MAGA behind you. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And so but I mean, he's not going to come anywhere close to winning the nomination anyway. He's got no traction.
No.
So it's, it's kind of a moot point to even speculate that at this point. But you're right. I mean, it's a bad move. But unfortunately, like at the same time, if they truly wanted the presidential nomination this cycle, they kind of had to like take down Trump somehow to get there, because Trump's going to just win otherwise. Yeah. And so, I understand what they're thinking, I guess, on that level, but like, it just came across as a bad look for everybody involved, except for Trump.
Yeah.
And the smartest thing he did was not debate, because all they would have done is talked about his court cases. There would have been nothing of substance. I know people are like, he deserves to be on the stage to tell us about X, Y, and Z. It's like, yeah, that's never going to come up. All they're going to do, all these people that ask debate questions are only going to ask about Trump's court cases, X, Y, and Z, this and there, and it's going to be nothing of substance. So I don't blame him for not going to any debates. So I want to switch gears. Joe Biden on the other side, he's pretty much locked in unless he dies, because it's too late for them to really run a Newsom, a Michelle Obama. They don't want to run Kamala, so that's why I think he's hanging him, because she would be obviously the next choice, right? You run your VP, and especially a situation like this with the incumbency. Do you see Biden making it to the finish line, or are they going to try and like kind of kill him to get Michelle in there on the last second? Because here's the thing. I listen, a good amount to Timcast, and Tim Pool's brought this up a bunch of times. Will you get Biden to a certain point, but then like, oh, Biden has a really bad medical emergency, he can't run, or maybe he dies, and oh man, we don't want Kamala, but there's a good chance Michelle Obama. You can't vet her, you don't really hear her do many speeches, you run off the last name. Like, that could be an interesting possibility. Do you see Biden making it to the finish line right now?
I don't know, because like I could see some weird October surprise where the dude's gone. And then that would upend the media, the election. Everybody kind of flip out like for days. Mm-hmm. And that would pose a problem. I don't know what the result of that problem would be, but it would pose a problem. And it would be absolute chaos. That's one thing for sure.
We get the Al Gore redemption arc if that happens in October. Al Gore comes back because he's younger than both of them, which is weird.
The worst thing is, though, is that let's say if Biden does die, like, it's hard to even say, they kind of wanted that to happen, or maybe they did it, because he's so damn old and he's so out of it that he could just croak at any minute. It's not a surprise if he dies this year. It wasn't a surprise if he died in 2020. Like, it's not a surprise at all.
True.
It's a interesting situation, and I think it's only going to get more interesting as, and I'm excited for the media reaction as Trump beats every single one of these trials. I think the way it's looking, they are all shaping up where we saw someone was like, oh, that's going to be problematic. And now as more things leak out, it's like they don't have much of anything on any of these. They just kind of threw a bunch of shit towards the wall and hope it all stuck. And we're seeing the things with, Jack Smith, they're going to shit. Anything with, what was that one woman that hired a dude, her spouse or her sex guy to he's paying him a bunch. Like, when you deal with these corrupt leftists who know nothing but cheating and then like using, things to get ahead, it all comes out. So I'm excited to see what goes on. So John, is your prediction we're seeing a Trump revenge tour? Is he going to be the president after 2024?
Yeah, unless there's some weird hijink pulled. Yeah, I don't see any other result. Personally.
I like it. I like it. So, John, thanks for coming on, man. This was lots of fun.
Yeah, thank you. It was great.
So once again, he's Jon Del Arroz. He is a best-selling author. Go do his YouTube channel. Go listen to him there. Both of them, actually, if you like comic books as well. And go to fandompulse.com. Go look out. Literature Devil's going to have his piece on there tomorrow, breaking down his correct opinion on Rorschach. And David, do you have anything else to say before we jump at it?
No, I enjoyed this heavily. It's always good to talk to someone in pop culture because we actually don't get to do that very much. So and it's always good to hear just rail against mainstream and what they've done to things that people love. So
absolutely. John, do you have anything else to say before we jump out of here?
That's it. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, awesome. So everybody, we appreciate you coming. We appreciate you listening. Give us a like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars, Spotify and iTunes. Spread this word of mouth and go find us on the socials. We'll be back again next week. So long, everybody.